Hey there, girlfriend. Ingafay here. Super excited to be here with you again today. I got a great topic for you today. We're going to talk about boss babe energy. And I can't wait to get into this juicy interview. So we'll see you on the other side. Hey, Allison.
Hey there, Inga. How are you?
Oh, I am great, girl. Super excited to be here with you today to talk about boss babe energy. But before we get into that, girl, we want to get into your business. We want to know a little bit more about you, who you are, who you serve, and how you serve them.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am very excited to be here. So, I am Alison Jones. I started Wellness Society about a year ago. And Wellness Society is all about creating healthy leadership so that we can have healthier teams and organizations. So, I had an almost 30-year career in the federal government and then corporate America, and learned a lot about leadership. My background's in organization development, and really decided that I wanted to get deeper down there in the weeds with organizations, helping them grow their leadership and blending that leadership with wellness to create healthier organizations. So I've got 3 kids. I live in Maryland. I love to travel. I love music. I love to read, and I love elephants. I can't leave that out. So that's who I am.
Cool, cool. So in this space that you're in, who do you primarily serve? I know we kind of talked about that a little bit before we got started, but tell the audience who you really help.
Right. So I speak to organizations on leadership and on things related to wellness in leadership, but really I'm very passionate about female leaders, whether they're entrepreneurs, executives, maybe first-time supervisors, first-time managers, but helping women really step into their leadership roles and to do so with authenticity and courage and all those things that can make female leaders really powerful leaders. I have a group called Glow that I began last year, growing the leadership of women, and it's really all about identifying values and those communication styles and everything that just help us be more effective leaders. So, really, that's my primary. The person I love working with is that female leader.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm curious, when you think of leadership, what does that mean to you specifically?
It's such a big question because defining leadership is something that is done in universities and organizations, and trying to really define what is leadership. And to me, really, leadership is all about, there's this energy with leadership.
Mm.
So it's really bringing a certain type of energy that inspires other people to want to follow you for good. So
Um,
the way I look at it is being a vessel. I talk about being a vessel through which positive impact can flow. It's not necessarily just about having influence. I think true leadership is really that positive influence where there's something about the way we're showing up. There's this energy we're bringing. There's this something that makes people want to say, hey, I want to be guided by this person. I
right.
trust this person. And to me, that's really all really what leadership is all about.
I like that. Energy is everything, isn't it?
Yes, it
Yeah.
really is.
Yes, yes, yes. So when you're thinking about this boss babe energy,
Yeah.
what role do you think authenticity plays in leadership?
Authenticity is just such a huge foundational part of leadership. So, and one of the things that's really beautiful about that, Inga, is that we can all show up as leaders differently. So, no two leaders are going to look the same way. And bringing our authentic selves to leadership, I think, is the first thing, really showing up as who we are. And I think not only is that really important because it's part of integrity and it helps people trust us because we're in alignment with who we are, the way that we are showing up as leaders. But I think it also is very important because it frees other people up to be who they are. And that
Yes.
there's not this one formula that we're trying to fit people into a box. So that's the
Right.
first thing that I think is hugely important about authenticity and leadership. The other thing is that the whole concept of that transparency, that vulnerability, the follow through, are you the same person at work as you are at home? That authenticity of people really being able to see the real you and including those vulnerabilities I think is such a foundational part of leadership. I think there's usually a lot of humility wrapped up in authentic leadership as well,
Right.
because it's that sense of understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, or the things that you can do but you need someone else to maybe fill in around the seams a little bit.
Right.
And people can dial into authenticity. It they can see it, right?
Yeah, they
you,
can.
you can you can see authenticity, and you can see inauthenticity. So I think it's something that's really important that people really develop and learn to be able to be comfortable showing up as who they are and being true to their word, having that integrity, being authentic. Are your actions matching your words?
Right.
All of those types of things.
Cool. Yeah, I really agree with you on that.
Mhm.
It's so important to be authentic, although sometimes it can be hard. And this is, I really wanted to get your take on this, because if you are in a leader, well, in corporate in general, and if you're in a particular company where you see somebody that's rising and doing it a certain way, oftentimes you may feel that you have to do it the way they did it because they are where you want to be. So you're following their path, but their path may not necessarily be your path. What do you tell someone that's in that kind of had that thought process going on?
I think that that's such a great point that you just brought up. And it's something that I was even thinking about earlier, because I think a lot of times you do see people trying to be like someone else or trying to be someone else. I think that it's very important that we do have role models. I think it's wonderful to see the way someone is achieving success, and there might be some things that we can learn and we can grow and we can model some success in some ways. So I think that is super important. It's sort of the whole concept of mentorship, right? If there's someone who's already 3 steps ahead of where you are, being mentored by that person to help you grow, I think is extremely valuable. But there's that line when you start to lose some of your authenticity if you're trying to just sort of be that person
Right.
and follow along exactly in their path and do what they're doing. And what I say is that's sort of disowning part of who you are. And
Yeah.
we never want to disown part of who we are for climbing the ladder, for success.
Right.
So I think it is that balance of maybe there are some things that you can learn from the person who has achieved the success. Maybe they learned how to communicate very assertively and appropriately, and maybe that's something that is helpful to learn from that person. But
Right.
is there a certain style that you're trying to copy, or a certain dress style, or mannerisms,
Right.
or all of the exact steps they took with the stepping stones that may not be authentic to you? So
Right.
I think it's something we just have to be very mindful of.
Yeah, I've had that to come up.
Mhm.
Times that I've worked with my clients, and even just talking with other colleagues when I was working in corporate, when they felt like for them to get to the same promised land or have that same achievement as their mentor, that they had to do it the same way. So I do appreciate you giving us some insight on that, because I'm sure that there oftentimes people have felt that way when it comes to, you know, rising up in that corporate ladder and doing those things that they want to achieve. So when you think of women in general, how do you think women can really be their authentic self in a male dominated field? Now, this I really want to hear, because I know many of you know that I am an engineer by training. So I was in a male dominated field for years. So
Woo!
I would really love to hear your input on this, Allison.
Yeah, and it kind of ties back into what we were just talking about in terms of being authentic to yourself and not necessarily following exactly what has worked for someone else. So I'll talk about that first, is
Right.
that the male dominated workplace and what men have sometimes shown as being the path to success, and
Right.
women can sometimes, I think, sacrifice part of their womanhood and
Yes.
their own feminine energy, thinking you got to be a little bit more dog eat dog. You have to be
Yep.
more of a thinker, not a feeler.
Right.
And so I like to think about it in terms of sort of that energy that we bring, again, going back to sort of the energy concept, and not so much a gender thing, men versus women, but really feminine energy. And then there's masculine energy.
Hmm.
And it's going to look different from woman to woman, right? So not everyone is going to present as a feminine woman the same way.
Right.
But being a woman in the workplace, if you tap into what is that more feminine energy that you have, and we know that feminine energy tends to be more focused on relationships,
Yes.
collaboration,
Yes.
nurturing,
Yes.
intuition, even
Yep.
empathy. Doesn't mean that men can't be very good at those things, but it's generally considered to be more of a feminine energy.
Right.
Whereas the more male energy tends to be more decisive, assertive,
Competitive.
dominant at times.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we can recognize that we can really harness, I think the pieces of that feminine being, that feminine energy, they are powerful. They're really powerful. And if we can harness that while still obviously being appropriately assertive when needed, and the decision making and all of that, that's a really potent combination.
Right.
And just like maybe it might be more typical for men to sometimes have to learn some of the softer skills of nurturing and
Yeah.
empathy, right?
Right.
There's studies about the more thinking side of the brain versus the feeling side of the brain. This is just biology, right?
Right.
So these things can be learned, but what I think is a shame is for women to, again, to disown that part of themselves, to think that in these male dominated industries we've got to act really tough, we got to wear our hair a certain way and dress a certain
Yep.
way and act a certain way and pretend that we don't really care about that person over there, when let's break those stereotypes and let's show up as our authentic selves, and let's instead start to change that culture that says that it has to be a certain way. I think that women can bring so much to even those male dominated industries. And I'm sure as an engineer, you were probably one of very few women, right?
Yes. Yep.
And sometimes probably felt like you were going it alone. And
Yeah.
that's where the courage piece comes in,
Yeah.
women really developing the courage to not step back and say, oh, leave it to the men, or they're not going to want me on this project. They're going to want to have, but to step into the places where we need to step into with courage while not sacrificing our authenticity.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I know that there are women out there, and I know in my earlier years of being an engineer, I'm getting my E's mixed up. Um, I did struggle with that
Yes.
because I mean it was because I was one of probably two or three. It was hard to have that courage to do that,
Yeah.
especially when it seemed like everyone else around you was a male. That's why I think it's very important for women to have those leadership positions and be a sounding board for the people that are coming behind her, to really allow her to be able to talk to her and give her some guidance on how she dealt with certain things or even some mistakes that she made. I think I mean, you talked about being transparent and authentic to be able to share, well, this is some things that I did that didn't work for me. So don't do this. Learn from my example that did not work. Can you speak to some of that as well?
Absolutely. And I think that, again, those vulnerabilities and that sharing doesn't make you weak, right?
Right, it
Because
doesn't. Mm-mm.
no, I mean, we all have the weaknesses. We all have
Oh, for
the
sure.
the things that didn't go so well, and to be able to share that is actually strength. It's not weakness. And
Right.
so I do think that it can be very challenging. You talked about when you were an engineer, and I remember years ago, and I kind of chuckle at myself that I was in an analytical role, and then my boss told me that I was going to become one of the facilitators, and this was in a very male dominated industry.
Mm.
And I remember telling him, and I cringed, but I told him, okay, that's great. I'm going to get my hair cut. I actually told him that I was going to get
Really?
my hair cut because I had really long hair at the time, not down to my waist, but it was very long. And in my head, as soon as I heard him tell me I was going to be a facilitator leading these sessions, I thought, I'm going to have to get a really kind of shorter professional haircut.
Wow.
And I look back and I think, why did I equate having longer feminine hair with something that wasn't going to be appropriate for the role? Not to say that, we should not be professional and show up, polished. Absolutely. All of that.
Right. Right.
But it's just interesting to me that I thought I had to tell him that I had to verbalize to my boss so that he would not worry that I was going to look too feminine, too much like a woman leading it. So I think we even sharing that kind of a story. If I were
Yeah.
mentoring a woman in an organization, just be you. People
Yeah.
are going to love you for what you bring, for your intelligence, for your skills, for
Exactly.
your relational, patterns and ways of making people feel comfortable.
Right.
And it's interesting because with all of the focus on emotional intelligence in the workplace, we're trying to teach people in the workplace to be able to have some of these softer skills and more of
Yeah.
this awareness and empathy. This
Yep.
is something that is needed. And that's a great thing that we're in a time when that is recognized instead of all these hard skills. We're now focusing on the soft skills. So women have a lot of opportunity now to just fully step into that as they are and maybe even change some cultures that have been steeped in some of the domineering, you gotta claw your way to the top type of
Exactly.
atmospheres.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Totally agree. This is definitely a new time for sure. And I'm grateful for that, especially for people that are going to be in the male dominated type of careers, such as engineering, that they are able to rise up and be able to have more of a voice than even I had when I did it. So I'm definitely grateful for the more emotionally intelligent folks that we have in the workplace now, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Do you talked about your group called Glow? The people that are on in that group, what is the age range that you normally work with?
Yeah, so we have from 30s up to 50s, and that's
Okay.
just so the way it fell out.
Right.
I'm actually going to be starting a second group. We had our founding members group, and I'm going to start a second group and sort of fold it all in. And we have people who are in schools. We have
Okay.
people who are in well-known organizations. We have people who are more entrepreneurs. Real estate funding, that type of thing.
Right.
So it's really just a diverse group of women. We actually just met on Monday night, and it's great because we're really just challenging each other and learning and growing together. Monday night's topic was on emotional regulation and
Mm.
how we can take, the events that happen and now what kind of thought or meaning are we attaching to that so that our emotions are going to be more productive and how we sort of, regulate that. And it's just great. We do practical examples and work through things. So really enjoying that and just knowing that it's helping people as they go back out into their workplaces. And it's not just necessarily workplaces. When I think of leadership, women who are raising children are leaders in their homes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And how
Hmm.
many women are in leadership roles in their communities, in their schools, their kids' schools, team leaders, self leadership, right? Just
Right.
leading ourselves, because that's really the most important thing is
Right.
how are we leading ourselves? So it's really exciting for me when people say, wow, this really helped. And then I had this conversation with someone and it made me pause and think, okay, what meaning am I attaching to this conversation?
Right.
And then having that awareness and then shifting in the moment and then having a better outcome. So
Right.
I just love that so much. And it's very rewarding to me to see the difference that it does make. And it's helping me to grow too.
So, Allison, I know you were telling me about a leadership quiz you had. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I created a quiz that's very brief and it's about the style of leadership that you tend to default to. And it's based on what I call the vessel model of leadership, which is that we can be coming from more of a victim type of mentality with our leadership, more of a victor mentality, or more of a vessel mentality. And so this quiz just starts to help you identify maybe where you fall a little bit, and then I send some helpful tips by email, just what you might want to focus on with that. So so I have that quiz. I have it available on my website, and it's pretty neat because it just starts to make you think about, okay, what are some of the patterns that I tend to be exhibiting in my leadership style?
Right. Right. Yeah, and just for those of you that want access to the quiz, of course, we're going to put that down in the description, but I do have it here on the screen. So don't worry about copying it down. Just go down to the description. You can just click on the hyperlink, so it'll take you directly to that, so you don't miss out on that. So I enjoyed talking to you here today, girl. I know when you think of one thing you would want the audience to act on today, what would be that one thing you would tell someone that wanted to level up their leadership?
I would say, so what we tend to do is we tend to think about changing behaviors and think, okay, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to be more that. I would say hold off for a second. Take a step back and look more at your underlying patterns and character traits. So I
Mm,
actually wrote a book, Character Leadership. I have it right here. And I have a model in there where I call it the 5 essential states of leadership. And they all start with the letter A. Authenticity is one of them. And the point is that those are foundational to your behavior. So it's sort of like building a house of cards. And if you don't have a strong foundation, it's going to crumble. So I would
right.
say just take a step back, work on your awareness, your acceptance, your abundance mindset, your authenticity, and your appreciation, that gratitude. Really cultivate character. And I think you're
Mm,
going to see your leadership naturally flow as a byproduct of really shoring up and developing the character. And when I do, if people want to take the style quiz, some follow-up emails do have some more information about the character traits and some things that people can do, some questions they can ask themselves to try to develop those character traits.
okay, I love that. I love that. So you have an A game too, because I have an A game. So that's
Yeah,
good.
I know. I want to get like the letter A just
Yeah.
tattooed on my arm so I can remember always the A.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, girl, it has been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insight with us today. And for those that are watching, thank you for taking the time to check this video out. If you know of anyone you would like me to interview, because you know I'm all about women empowerment, by all means, DM me and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching, and bye for now.